You know, it's funny that this subject is ours today because a much younger colleague is actually going to teach a course at Auburn on the Spanish Civil War. And we were talking about it yesterday, and he is, you know, being young, he's so idealistic. He actually thinks somebody 19 or 20 years old would know who Franco is. And I thought, you keep on. You keep on with your dreams. I mean, I can remember when he died in 1975. So it was very exciting. But to think of one of the youth, well, I mean, we had waited and waited. We thought, he's got to go. He's got to go. But he took his time. He really did. And he was ready. And I'm sure the church had gotten him super ready by that point, because he was very, very devout in the church. Now, what I was trying last time to talk about is all that preceded Franco's ascension into power, because while to our generation, if I may include you younger folks, you will understand that Primo de Rivera probably doesn't make the who's who of Spanish authoritarianism. I mean, I'm interested in him, and certainly my colleague was. When he said, "You know about him?" I said, "Oh yeah, I've studied. I went to school a long time ago, and I try to keep up with my studies. So yeah, so I knew about Primo, but of course, because Franco was able to hold on so long and was able during those difficult times, shall we say, after World War II, Franco was pretty much alone. He gets a lot of attention because, let's face it, by 1946, fascism isn't cool. I mean, it was like, it was, real hot and you're really with it. The in crowd, remember that song? Yeah, it's not, it's the out crowd. So it's very, very interesting. How did it happen? Well, a lot of it, of course, goes back to the fact, as my younger colleague was telling me, about the 19th century. And I said, well, that's real interesting, but I just don't think I want to go there. We'll just let, those specialists, but I think we'll just keep it with the 20th century and let it go. But I mean, the division between left and right is not something that is exactly strange to us or foreign. We do understand that these two groups, as opposed to moderation or compromisers, that's part of Spanish history, as it is the history of many other places. And if there is no coming together, we certainly have an example in Spain. Primo de Rivera's time, I can't say it led to an election, but it certainly had an excitement among those who were left-wing. And in Spain, that would include anarchists, socialists, communists, and, throw in a few radicals and liberals and you see everything but, just any group that's not part of the conservatives. And there are plenty of conservatives like the church and the nobility and the fat cats and so forth. Well, yeah, I mean, they've got to be in too. I mean, yeah. Everybody's got a group. All of this is to say that Franco, who had been a military leader not of the highest rank, will eventually take control of this anti-government force. The government, which is now the Republic, is going to do everything it can, if you ask me, to alienate the elements that will eventually follow Franco. I think I told you, for example, removing all the crucifixes from the schoolrooms, making Spain totally secular, as far as they could, more or less providing a sort of government social program, and yes, getting folks land. Don't mess with my land, because that's serious. But they were trying to take over much of the land and then establish small farms and that sort of thing for peasants. And you say, wow, but this is the 20th century. But this is Spain. Okay, so we're not really with the latest, though. Just believe me, in terms of what was going on, Spain's way behind. In any event, we know that Franco rebelled against his own government, and you could say he committed treason. His army, such as it was, consisted of both Spanish troops who would have been, I suppose, traitors by following him. But one of the interesting things to me is much of his army consisted of people from Morocco. Can you just imagine that? They were, I suppose, compensated, these Moroccan forces, but they followed Franco and his men's orders, and they led the force that we call nationalists. Nationalists versus those who supported the government, loyalists. It's really hard to keep that in mind, and I don't think it's easy to say, I can't make up my mind. They both have some good points. It's like you might even go to the polling place and gee, I don't know. Yeah, you know. You're on one side or the other. I don't think you ever had a problem about decisions, what to do. No, I think you pretty much do know. As far as getting outside support, General Franco, of course, had support from the Germans and the Italians, and I think it's pretty obvious that that's where Mussolini and Hitler achieved a sort of understanding. I'm not sure that's the reason that we have the Berlin-Rome axis, but it couldn't have hurt. But the bombings, the armies, and all the rest of support the Germans and Italians provided for Franco. And of course, as they do so, we understand Franco, I'm sure he said gracias and all that, but that's not really what we want. It's sort of like on Tiger Giving Day. I know, I was going to get that in. Hey, good to see you.
You go.
It's like, thank you is nice, but we like to see the folding stuff. Okay? I know you're a generation of cards, but I love the old money. So I'm just telling you that the Franco and his forces are not going to join the Germans and the Italians, and that really made Hitler unhappy. because I'm sure in the privacy of his quarters, he might have said, why, I think Franco's a bit of an ingrate. Or he may have used stronger language. I don't know. I wasn't there. But I'm just saying, it's interesting to me that Franco was clever enough to know that it was not in his best interest to get in World War II. So he set that one out. Meanwhile, the Loyalists become the subject of, what shall I call it? A lot of interest in the United States. Now, while I understand, as I mentioned last time, there was only limited interest in the Ethiopian struggle against the Italians, which I noted occurred largely in heavily African-American centers like Harlem, where they were concerned about Ethiopia. It appears that the campaign to preserve the Republic, thanks to the support of many groups, including the American Communist Party, would lead to, I have read, 3,000 troops coming from other places to Spain. They were not allowed to go officially from the United States, but they went, I guess you might say, on their own. And as they did so, they went with lots and lots of idealism. I told some of you all last time that the fellow who died at the age of 100 in 2016 in California was totally committed to the cause, capital C. He believed in it. It was all about it. And I guess he got back home, according to the article, joined the Communist Party, became a leader in the NAACP. And he was basically, in his life in California, dedicated to a variety of various leftist causes. I mean, these people, you don't go to Spain because somebody drafts you. Because it was not something that the United States government wanted to have anything to do with. It was all because you were a believer. And I mean, I've never heard of the Franco group coming. These people were supporting the Republic. And they stayed as long as they could. And it's quite a story. And, you know, they still have an organization, I guess, of their families. People who were part of this loyalist group. Now, you may wonder why nobody went in. It's not that there wasn't plenty of propaganda that, you know, the way that, and I don't mean propaganda necessarily in a bad word. We have information for Tiger Giving Day, but I wouldn't call that propaganda in a bad way. I just think it's encouragement. Okay? And so this kind of encouragement is to show you this. And you say, well, I see that good-looking cardinal, and that would just get me more excited to support Franco. Oh, I don't know about that. If you were on the left wing and you were seeing some symbol of Catholicism, and you see the soldier and the various other individuals on the Franco boat, you're going, they need to go down. You know, I love my linen. And I don't mean the stuff on your bed either. You get it, yes. 1917 and all that. So all of this is to say that if you want propaganda, we can provide that. And if you see the people of color, that's your Moroccans that I promised. They are right there, and they're fighting for Franco. And they are mercenaries for that cause. In any event, this is an effort to get the French and the British off their duffs. Maybe even the United States. Boy, if they could have pulled that off. But there were people in Britain and France who were going, we may not like Franco, but we hardly want to be involved in this. They might say, we're very concerned about the Germans. And of course, the big D, the Depression. Lest we ever forget. If you're saying, why didn't they do it? I mean, look around. If you were thinking about that particular time. So, they formed the Non-Intervention Committee. Jenny?
Who are the faces down at the bottom there?
I don't always know these things. I'm so sorry.
Sure you do.
What?
I have confidence in you. Who are they supposed to be?
I have no idea.
It's like the...
I imagine they're more Moroccan troops.
Okay.
That's what I would think, at least. Well, yeah, that too, the trireme, if you want to get military on it. But yeah, but the idea is that I'm sorry, Frank.
He said something about the Nazis.
Okay, yeah, the Nazis there, and all of these are on the Franco boat. All of this means that the Non-Intervention Committee technically was there to prevent this from becoming a world war. And we will note that this would be over in 1939, just in time for World War II. So you think, wow, what neat timing. No, I don't think it just worked out that way. It's interesting to me, though, that as far as the Non-Intervention Committee is concerned, it's a terrible blow if you were a supporter of the Republic. But it also means that over east, Stalin is very excited. So for him, it's like, I've got so many projects right here at home. I've got my purge trials. I've got my collectivization. I don't know. I've got a lot of stress. So I'm hoping Stalin's doctors could help him with that. But meanwhile, he decided to provide substantial support for the Republican cause. And like my college president used to say, if you take government money, it will not be without some strings. So, I definitely understand that, and you can imagine that no one would have assumed that Stalin was providing support. And I just want to help y'all. I'd read some of your literature, and I'm really No. And I have read so much about the International Army, the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, and they are what we call true believers. In other words, they love them some Moscow. I mean, to tell you the truth, you can keep your Rome, you can keep your Jerusalem. Give us the big M. We want to be there. And can you imagine in their rooms, they'd have the big poster of Stalin, and like when they were working out, and they think, we love you, Big Joe. You know, well, maybe not quite that casually, but in other words, he was venerated. And all of this is to say that the aid was significant. And all I can say is, as we all know in Russia, even Russia today, I mean, it's huge. There's just a lot going on there. And so we're not surprised with all of the other expenses. And believe me, there were plenty of expenses. When you have purge trials, I mean, trials are expensive. I mean, they cost money. Because before they execute all these people, we have to, they have to have trials. And I mean, and folks, and the legal profession don't work cheap either. So I'm just telling you. The idea, though, seriously, is that the Soviets were providing support for the government, but with the troops and planes of Germany and Italy, ultimately, of course, Franco will prevail. These photographs of the Abraham Lincoln Brigade will give you an idea that these individuals, they were not a trained army. I guess basically they're just true believers, and then they get there and then they have training. I am sure there were people who had trained themselves, maybe veterans, younger veterans. And of course, in addition to just, what did we used to call it when I was in school? Military Science and Tactics, MST, yes indeed. You also had classes in Communism 101. Yes, you did. And why I love the Soviet Union. Hart, Stalin, I mean, it's not like you're going to go, I don't know, maybe I need to go over that lesson again. I'm not sure. Yes, you are. Well, then you're not a believer. Why are you in Spain? It's not like you have questions and like, gosh, I don't know. That whole thing about the dictatorship of the proletariat, it's very confusing. Is that true? Or, okay, if you're a doubter, you are really on the edge of heresy. You know what I'd do if I were you? Shut your mouth. I would keep quiet and become a believer. The big B, believe. And remember, these folks are younger, so it's easier. Everybody's following the cause. And I guess most of them, this Abraham Lincoln Brigade, that is the survivors, because many died, but many of these people who survived would have shipped home, I suppose, from France by late 38, 39, when the cause was even, and you can just imagine there's not going to be anybody there greeting them like, how people are greeted at airports, returning soldiers. There's nobody, we love you, communists, or something like that. No. If you're not careful, there would be government agents there thinking, what were you doing in Spain? That kind of thing. So it was not, in any sense, honored. Now, some of these people, including Mr. Berg there, actually went into the Second World War. I think he was drafted, if you want to know the truth. If I remember that article we were talking about, that he actually became part of the force. But till the day he died in 2016, let me tell you, he was a believer. And so it never, these people are not going to say, I think the GOP is the way to go. I don't think these were people who were sort of borderlines. I think they were believers. The racial aspect is always very interesting, and I want to note that because I kept wondering, why was there such a large African American component? And the answer, according to one of my sources, was that when they realized Ethiopia had fallen, which is really where they wanted to be, they decided to support this anti-Franco campaign in Spain. Because remember, these are volunteers. They don't get drafted to be in this Abraham Lincoln Brigade. It's all about, we want to be there, we are believers, and all the rest of it. And as my sources have pointed out, you have an integrated army here before you had it in the United States. And that's the truth, because some of you know that didn't come until the Truman administration. So after this. So I think that's very, very interesting. And again, the whole aspect of the true believers. Stalin, as we like to say in the South, got out while the getting was good, because I think, cost effectiveness. I didn't take accounting, but I think he said, I've got these purge trials, I've got so much on my plate now, and this isn't working out like I hoped. So I wish you all the best, and I'm going to let it go. But I'll tell you something on a serious note. Many of the supporters of the Republic would end up in gulags after World War II. Isn't that unbelievable? It's like he just didn't accept failure. And so it's not like, well, I know you all meant to do a good job, and I really respect you for that. That's not our Stalin. So actually, the irony of this is many true believers ended up dying in Soviet prison camps, which is very strange to me. To note how it fell apart, and first of all, let's hear it for Antonio Salazar. He's staying there in Portugal, and I presume he was minding his own business. If I were over there in Portugal, I would have just said, well, I don't know how this is going to come out, but I want to wish you all the best. I think that's very important, to be neutral regardless of any personal feelings that he had. And later, not unexpectedly, Salazar and Franco developed a friendship of sorts. Because, and this will surprise some, Franco is not, strictly speaking, a fascist as an authoritarian. You may hear differently, but I can promise you that he carefully paid tribute to the church, to the old Spain, in ways that Mussolini and Hitler would never have done. The whole ideology of fascism was anathema to someone like Franco. Would he accept support from the Phalanges, the Spanish fascists? Of course. In other words, any political movement is based on a coalition, isn't it? So I'll take your help, but that doesn't mean, of course, that I agree with you or you agree with me necessarily. Now, Madrid, of course, is the center, and you can see how the nationalists, and you can follow with the dates and understand that it made for a very, very complicated situation, particularly because up north there's Barcelona. And many of you have been to Barcelona, I suspect. Beautiful city, very interesting, with much European, much French influence, actually. Because, well, I won't go into its medieval aspect, but that's another story. But Barcelona, as I mentioned last time, and just to repeat this, became a great center of anarchism. And again, if you want to be one of the cool kids and you were part of that anarchist movement, oh, you're just going like, wow, this is so neat. Why aren't more people going anarchist? It's like, it was very big. Not so big for the Republic itself, for obvious reasons, because if you're trying to maintain anarchism, it's beautiful. It's very romantic. I mean, you just think, oh, we're in anarchy. But if, say you were a school person, you could understand it could be somewhat difficult. You would just say to the children, let us all work together and love one another. They look at you, you're crazy, you know? I think you'll understand then that Barcelona had its own set of troubles. But it can appeal to people who are militants, who are excited. We are freed from the boundaries of authority and order. And now we can just be who we want to be. And you say, oh, I just want to sing. I just want to, yeah, good for you. But if you, we've also got to worry about, here come our Italian enemies, and here come the Germans. And so anarchy didn't work out, you know. It seemed like a good idea at the time, you know, that sort of thing. But it didn't work out for them. So anarchy is really a problem for the Republic if you stop and think about it. Because if maybe all the Republican forces had been together, and if there hadn't been a non-intervention committee, if there could have been aid from, official aid, from the British, the French, or even the Americans, it might have been different, but it wasn't. And so by 1939, if you have a membership card in the Karl Marx fan club, I would have crossed the Pyrenees. I would have said, adios. Oh, yes, because it was over. And this would include, of course, shall I call him Senor or Monsieur? The greatest artist of the period. If you stop and think, his paintings at the Prado and other places, yeah, absolutely. The paintings will represent to many the communist cause. He was a dedicated communist. I don't think I called his name, did I? But the painting, Guernica, well, yeah. And that, I think he lived until the 70s or 80s. Lived a long time and had many friends of the female persuasion. And yes, so I guess he took time off from the painting. But that is, the Cubism is not everyone's favorite, but apparently it had a lot of following. And I don't think I think basically as the artistic community, I don't think they would even go back to Spain during Franco's time. I mean, the feeling was so strongly against him. I don't think that kept General Franco up at night, but it was interesting to understand what a profound difference to Spain, the death of Franco, would bring about. Obviously, when we talk about 1939, the expression never a dull moment comes into focus, because it's not as if we have time to think about, oh, the Spanish situation's unfortunate. Well, yes, it's very unfortunate. I'm sure thousands and thousands of Spanish people were dead and cities destroyed. The Civil War was horrible. And I'm sure if you were a supporter of the Republic, I would think it would be good to either go to France or maintain a low profile. Wouldn't you think? I mean, it's so scary. I mean, if you are someone like a Picasso or someone of that sort, I mean, you're so famous that I'm sure Franco's government wouldn't have done anything to him, but for his own purposes, he wanted to continue on with his work, so there was no possibility he would stay in Spain. And in fact, I'm sure there was a large Spanish community in Paris, for that matter. But that is not to say that the French were willing to go into Spain, because they weren't. And that would include Blum. Remember Blum, B-L-U-M? He was the head of the French government, the first Jewish person to be the leader of the French government, Leon Blum. And Blum, much to his supporters' shock, said, no, I just don't think that would be a good idea. Well, you know that you think folks just love, well, that's politics. They say, you know, we agree with many things you did, merci beaucoup, but you didn't go help the Spanish Republic, and now we hate you. I mean, so, yeah, that's how folks treat you sometimes. You think they love you, and then they get over you. So if you've got a thin skin, don't go into politics. Yeah, I think that Blum's career is very, very hard. What is it Truman used to say? If you want a friend in Washington, get a dog. It's I think the same would be true in Paris, because I don't think it was so easy. Now, in Britain, I'm not so sure that they were as worked up, but I think there was a sizable French element that would have wanted the Third Republic to have been involved. I put the term art in quotation marks merely because it seems to me like something out of the Walmart art section. You know what I mean? A little cheesy, but I thought it was interesting that, and this, of course, was officially sanctioned, quote unquote, artwork by the Soviet government. If you were an artist of, this is called socialist realism. If you want to contribute some to this museum, you can. No, I mean, we had an exhibit of Soviet art, gosh, a few years back. Maybe 13, 14, right around in there. And I'm always struck exactly by the fact we want to show the hard workers, and they probably have a hammer and sickle if they were tatting or whatever you call it, when people mark up their bodies. And all of this is to say that that whole idea of the believers, and that I think is the figure here, the Soviet soldier, and the people who are being laid low, and you assume probably some Catholics in there too. Yeah, they're being brought down, oppressors. The people demand they be eliminated. Purge city, yeah. Of course, we can never forget Ernest Hemingway. Who would want to? He was a true believer in the cause of the Republic. And if you ever want a movie to watch, you may enjoy the 1943 epic For Whom the Bell Tolls, which is a very interesting film with Gary Cooper and Ingrid Bergman, based on the 1937 novel. I was surprised that so many people, I mean, it's one of, I suppose, Hemingway's most famous works. And of course, I was surprised that it was made in a movie in 1943. I don't know why I was surprised, because by 1943 we were on the side of the Allies, and which meant we were on the side of Stalin. And so they provide in that film a great apology for the Spanish Republic. I mean, it's like, if you remember, the characters portrayed by Ingrid Bergman and Gary Cooper are just wonderful. And they do some kissing, but it's, don't worry, it's PG, okay? I won't say G, because I think you would need a parent with you, because there's a lot of kissing, because I think the Ingrid Bergman and Gary Cooper were getting a lot of kissing back then. So, and the idea, of course, is that he is young and idealistic, and he's there to help the cause of freedom and truth, and she's a young Spanish revolutionary. Remember what happened to her father? He was killed. By whom? Franco. So, I mean, it's like, yeah, it's good versus bad, but it's certainly worth seeing. In any event, between Hemingway and then Picasso, but let's not forget George Orwell. Now, if I told you Animal Farm, I imagine a vast majority of this room would have read it. What about 1984? You're so educated, God. I mean, yeah, I mean, but homage to Catalonia, the room quiet. No? Okay, you can get a used copy on Amazon. It can be rushed to your home. Don't worry. I'm pushing copies. I think, yeah, all profits will go to Ollie. But the idea being, of course, homage to Catalonia is the closest we can get to our own account. He died in 50, 51, right around in there. The interesting fellow, but he was a British socialist and very dedicated to the cause. But something happened, I guess, after he got home, because he had a big change, because when he wrote Animal Farm, I think you can say the whole pig business shows us that he'd gotten over those ideas of egalitarianism, and yeah, we all just love each other. I don't think so. Pigs rule. Yeah, bacon forever. Yeah, that is the idea. Well, I guess maybe this would be a good time for a break.
Would you like a break, Boss?
Might I do it now?
Well, you would do it whatever you like.
I just want to do it in terms of time for people to think about what tomorrow is going to bring. I'm trying. Really? I'm pushing. Yeah. Okay. You got 4.5 minutes, though. That isn't changing. They've had enough fun. It's not I'm anti-fun, but I don't think need too much. Yes, I mean, this book that he was very much in that international brigade.
The communists hunted him down and his group. That's probably why he became so anti-communist.
That will do it every time when you get hunted down, because that book would indicate, I mean, but he was fervent, but again, they don't care. They don't appreciate
You're not the
you.
right kind of Marxist.
No, I mean, the Trotskyites.
Oh, yeah.
You can just go to hell, red hell.
Ice pick baby.
Yeah, we all remember the late, great Leon. All right, here we go. 1938, you say, but wait, where is 1937? Well, for whatever reason, and I guess this has a lot to do with Hitler himself, not a lot happened in 1937. That's weird, isn't it? It's sort of like he announced it will be the policy of no surprises, which is an odd thing to say, but I guess he meant that as preparations, obviously, for war were continuing, and no one ever doubted that I know about, who thought that somehow we can bring about a settlement of the issues. It does not appear, as far as the public was concerned, that 1937 would lead to some sort of peace and goodwill among the powers. However, by 1938, they were ready, and it all had to do with Austria. I chose this photograph because I thought, A, the outfits were kind of interesting, and B, because I want you to remember the man closest to the, what would you call it, the ramp? That, of course, was one of Hitler's most important men, a later convert to the Nazis, but one of great significance. He escaped the gallows at Nuremberg, but during this period, he certainly had importance to the movement, particularly as ambassador to Austria. We know now that he was involved in the death of Dollfuss, although he went to the funeral, which I think is a little hypocritical, but some of you will remember Engelbert Dollfuss and will be aware of how that occurred. But we understand that Dollfuss would be succeeded by another authoritarian figure who wanted to maintain Austrian independence. And meanwhile, Schuschnigg there with his wife and his associates hoped to bring about Hitler's greatest dream. And of course, that's going to be Anschluss. Did I get that right? Okay. They wanted it to be a part as it had been historically. We all remember the Holy Roman Empire. We all remember Austria-Hungary. And we understand the separation. And some, like Adolf Hitler, who was an Austrian, thought this will be it. This is something I can bring about. Dollfuss and the new individual will be the one who will try to prevent it. Schuschnigg. He was a very interesting character. He would end up in a prison camp during the war, and then he would go on to an academic career in New York before he went back home to Austria, where he died. So he had a very interesting life. And Kurt von Schuschnigg, who I believe was an associate of Dollfuss, more or less had the approval of the Austrian right wing. Now, I know what you're going to ask me. Well, what if I were an Austrian communist? Could I hang out with you?
No.
The answer is 9. Okay, you are not welcome. You ever voting? I would like get a moving van, because if Dolphus didn't like you, Shushnik certainly didn't. Okay, and you say, but what if I'm a Trotskyite or a variation? No, no, no. Okay, now. How about if I'm a member of the Roman Catholic Church? Yeah, okay, okay, now we're on safe track. We understand then the various elements, the well-to-do people, including the bourgeois class, the Catholic Church, all the usual suspects, they are all lined up behind Kurt von Schuschnigg. But any Austrian, except for Austrian Nazis, at least agreed on one thing: we don't want to be taken over by Germany. And there's a story behind that. There had been a movement in 1918, 1919, right after the Great War. They asked the peacemakers there at Versailles, they said, you know, Wilson talked so much in the 14 points about nations getting together. So, can we all be together? No, loser. You say, yeah, that's harsh. So, you know that whole thing about being ecumenical, yeah, get over it. Austria must be separate from Germany. And you've got reparations to pay, so you've got some other problems. So you get over yourselves. Don't you be talking nationalism like you're going to be part of Germany and then y'all can. No. You're a loser. And that hurts. I mean, bring the Kleenex if they'd had it back then. But I'm thinking, yeah, it's definitely an interesting issue to think about how Austria had not been independent that long. Do you realize? I always think that's so interesting when we think about the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Habsburgs. And you could, you know, if you got one of those crazy Saturdays and it's raining and you say, I think I'll read about the history of the Austrians. Because you could spend all day finding out about how that part of German history is a very interesting one and how they ended up separate. As I always like to tell the students, you know, about how nobody ever talks about, I'm going to school to learn Austrian, because of course they're Germans. But Austrians are not in Germany. So with that, what has happened? Well, of course, if we are going to be Austria, we've got to have a big buddy. And who's that big buddy? It's going to be Italy. And you say, is that really the kind of big buddy we want? Look, if you're Austria, beggars can't be choosers. You take your friend and you say, I love you, Benito. You are a duce of duces. Okay? It's like, you know, it's awful. But again, you have to take them as you can get them. And that was Schuschnigg. Dollfuss had been very close to Mussolini. As a matter of fact, I think I told you all the Dollfuss family had been visiting Rome when Dollfuss was assassinated. So it's not surprising at all to me to understand that Schuschnigg would try to continue this policy, but he would find that attitudes in Rome had changed. And that, of course, is our subject now, because if attitudes had changed, the reason is, why have they changed? because back when Adolfo was killed, you remember Il Duce was furious. He had the Italian forces out there. Said, you better watch out, you Germans, or we're going to kick, you know what. And I'm sure the Germans were frightened to death, scared. But now, I think Schuschnigg, I won't say he's getting the cold shoulder in Rome. I just think he's saying, well, let's just all hope for the best. Peace. But that's not what we want. We wanted warmth. We love you, Austria. You're our little buddy. She's not getting that. And so what is old Schuschnigg going to do? Well, he will go, not surprisingly, he'll go to Germany. He will try to negotiate Austrian independence. He will say, in effect, to Hitler, how about if we have open borders and Austrians and Germans can come and go, and we recognize you all as really special. And we love you very much. Every kind of baloney you can think of that he thought possibly could satisfy the German government. And this is going on, in 1937, when you know that nothing is going to please Hitler except Anschluss itself. I don't know if he strung Schuschnigg along and sort of, oh, maybe. I'm crazy about y'all. Can we hang out more? That sort of thing. And so Schuschnigg goes back to Vienna and tells his cabinet, man, I think the Fuhrer's buying it. I think we're really getting tight. Because again, it's not that Schuschnigg is not a Nazi. I can't say that too well. I don't have to convince you, but you can understand that he is very sympathetic to right-wing ideas. It's not like he's reaching out to pinks and reds and saying, can we be friends? No. But he doesn't like the Nazis either. And somehow he would like to keep Austria as an independent country, but that's not going to work. And when Schuschnigg, and this will basically erupt matters, I think Schuschnigg announced he is going to have a plebiscite to ask the Austrian citizens to vote whether they want to be independent or not before there can be a vote. This is March. German troops will march in. So that'll be the end of that. And Anschluss. This is so interesting to me when we see these pictures in old Technicolor. And that's when you really realize, look at your old high school annual sometimes, and you think of it, and you see the colors, and you think, what happened? Things have gotten a lot better. But this is 1938 color. And of course, it's just a wonderful day in Vienna as the German troops march in. Yes, we could not be more excited. Greetings, German friends. We are so glad to have you. Yeah. Well, I'm not sure everybody in Vienna would have agreed with that. I think there were some people who were thinking, gee, I think I need to get a train. One of them was named Sigmund Freud, and he was taking the next train to, I think he ended up in London. I'm not sure exactly where he might have stopped off, but I don't think Jewish psychiatrists would have been welcomed in the future Austria, future Vienna, because I think even, well, the Freuds urged his departure as soon. He didn't want to, but he ended up in London where he died. And I am sure there were many prominent Jews and others, communists, go to Moscow. But whoever you are, if you consider Schuschnigg to be strict, it will be, of course, nothing like it will be once the Anschluss is accomplished. And we sort of sit back and think international reaction will be shocking. Well, not as much as you might think. Remember the 7th of March, 1936? Of course she does. The valedictorian of the class stated clearly that this was the remilitarization of the Rhineland. And that's why she's graduating with honors someday. Someday. It will be still a long time for her to get all her credits. We want to keep you as long as possible, so we don't want to rush it. But the 7th of March, 1936, once you let them into the Rhineland, there ain't no stopping us now, as that song used to, you know, Motown. Yeah, so, yeah, you got to keep up with me. I go from period to period quickly. So, all of this then is to say that now, if you are part of this group, not all Nazis, but if you are on that particular sphere, you're okay. Of course, I think, you know, sort of joshingly, I might say, if you're part of the Vienna Chamber of Commerce, I think you would probably, this would be a kind of a downer, because this would be like, oh, now everybody will want to go to Berlin. I mean, that's the hot place, you know. It's like we're number 2. I don't guess people in Chicago feel that way.
No, never.
But never. I'm sure you are high and mighty. But there's a lot of resentment. Isn't that kind of interesting when you think about, well, Vienna? I know you and me, but I'm sure those folks in Berlin say, now you're not so big, are you? You're number 2. Talking about Vienna. Because Berlin, we're the center. We're hot stuff. We are the middle of the Great Reich.
Vienna isn't even Munich.
Well, I mean, see, you're even harsher. I was just, but we understand, of course, that this is a big change. But again, we're not surprised, and we understand, since I'm going down oldies, we've only just begun. And we understand there will be lots more. Now, you ask yourself at this time, I guess the world is horrified. Oh, I don't know. Concerned, interested, you're going to have to deal with it. I mean, Austria is a country. Did I say is? I think I meant was. I think we just made it into a German province. And I'm sure there was some feeling. I mean, Austria was a member of the League of Nations. So what are we going to do? Let's see. We can spank Germany. Oh, that's right. Germany's not a member of the League of Nations. So I guess you can't do that. Maybe you could say, bad Germany, bad Germany. Yeah, I'm sure that will hurt their feelings. They seem so sensitive. So, yeah, more or less, there is not going to be any major reaction. I don't think the French and British were going to say, that's just fine. I mean, it's not like going into the Rhineland, because the Germans could legitimately claim that was their land. But taking Austria, a member of the League of Nations, can hardly be justified except for the fact that Hitler wanted his home to be part of Germany. And that was all that he could come up with and all he needed. On the other hand, he was wondering, and we all do in relationships, don't we often wonder when we're in a relationship, I wonder what our partner is thinking, feeling. Do they feel like we do? That was sometimes what was going on between the Italians and the Germans. You know, it could be exciting. They got excited in Spain, but there were always those questions. Will we always be true to each other? Or can there be any flirting? Or are you cooling off? I don't know what was going on. And that's where the British come in. The British, bless their hearts, always thought they could get the Italians back. You know, it's like, oh, buongiorno, we really love you. You know, Britain and Italy, we want to be with you. We're just crazy about you. And this will be true, but we will understand that when Hitler got a phone call about the time of the Anschluss, maybe the next day, it was one of the most exciting phone calls that he ever had. I mean, because you think about that. We all know that special call from a loved one. So you think, how could it be? Well, the reason we know about this, I wasn't hanging out with them at the time, but it was actually told at the Nuremberg trials. It really was. And guess who by? His name was Prince Philip of Hesse. And old Prince Philip was a predecessor of you-know-who, Queen's husband. So that was the same family. But he was Hitler's envoy to Mussolini. And Prince Philip of Hesse was calling, you know, person to person from, as they, you know, back in that day, from, I guess, Rome to Berlin or Berchtesgaden, wherever it was. And he said, I've got some news for you. He said, well, I can't wait to hear. He says, Mussolini says, it's going to be fine. Hitler went berserk. I mean, super berserk. I mean, even more berserk than usual. I mean, basically he said, then tell Mussolini, again, to quote an old song, ain't no mountain high enough. Our love is here to stay. I'm just full of oldies today. But you get the idea. We are so tight. Tell him I'll never forget this. Whenever he needs me, just give me a call, and I'll be there. Yeah, I should have been writing. Why am I not getting all this money? I'm giving it to Ollie, of course.
Good for you.
Yeah. So, basically, it is true, though, that he made, through Prince Philip of Hesse, this big commitment. And Mussolini was just saying, Austria, Smaustria, I don't care about that. What I care about is you and what we mean to each other. And it's like, and you say, oh, well, then we don't have to come back. The story's over. Oh, no. The true love, the course of true love never runs smooth. There's going to be some hurt coming up, heartbreak, danger straight ahead. Because we're going to see how, in fact, if the quotation is correct, that Mussolini would say, every time Hitler takes a country, he gives me a phone call. And, yeah, that's got to hurt. I thought we were partners. I thought we believed in each other. Why is it you didn't tell me you planned to conquer that country? Oh, I meant to. I meant to. I really care about you, though. Yeah, right. I mean, there's nothing worse in a relationship, you know, hurt feelings. And it's up and down between Hitler and Mussolini. Let me just put it that way. And if you hear the axes, they were just always blissful, you've read lies. And I'm here to tell you, I want you to know that. There were efforts on the part of the British to reach out. Now remember, Ethiopia is just a memory, an independent Ethiopia. We lost out on that one. But they were still hoping that some way, this is the British government, we can somehow please the Italians so that Mussolini will say, you know, you're right, we're crazy about you. We never want to be near that. What was his name? Adolf Hitler? Yuck. But, you know, we woo, flowers, candy. We try everything to woo. And here is the scene. I just love this. I just love this. Doesn't he look a little like Fredo at the end? This is the foreign minister, Count Chano, who is Mussolini's son-in-law. And you say, who's the big tall one? Oh, Lord Halifax, who became British ambassador to the United States. And boy, he lived a lot longer than the other fellows. 1980. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. So he must have taken care of that big old frame. But he was foreign minister, and Mussolini, who was very bored at opera, isn't that a shock? But he's there, and poor Chamberlain, bless his heart. Yeah, we got a lot more to say about Chamberlain. But at this time, they are sitting through the opera together, and you're thinking, boy, I bet that was just a wonderful time. It was had by all. Not so much. Not so much. I'm thinking, and you know, operas are not short. It's not like you go and you say, oh, this will be a quickie. No, it won't be. It's a longie. It was huge, and it's not like, and of course, they're both thinking, when do we get to the good stuff? Well, maybe after this, Mussolini's going to say, you know what? We've gotten over Germany, but we love you, John Bull. No, they're not going to say that. He tried hard, though. He sat through operas with him. As you can see, he and Lord Halifax. And I am thinking that this will be another desperate effort on the part of the British government to somehow disrupt this growing relationship. Because by this point, Austria's gone. And so what are we going to do next if we are the British government? You say, well, what are the French doing? They're waiting to see what the British will do. It's like, that's exactly right. I mean, it's sad to say, but the French are so divided among themselves that they say, we'll just let the British show us how they want to go, and then we'll go, oui. We're all behind you. Go, England, France. You know, it's that sort of thing. It's sad, but that's the way it will be. In any event, that look on Chamberlain's face, I'm wondering, he said, boy, I wonder, that train to London's going to be great. Again, I just can't see these people are happy together, you know. It's like, it's not a happy group. And of course, as we're going to see, Chamberlain is going to be one of the most important names in this period because we associate him with the origins of World War II and the tragedies that will behold Britain and the rest of Europe, indeed the world. I look forward to seeing you, and thank you so much for your attention today. Appreciate y'all being here.